My name is Mmoua. This is my final presentation for Sociology 101. For this presentation, my subject will be the segregation between white and black students in the modern public school system. To analyze this topic and issue, I will be using social conflict theory, which is when we take life as a competition and we evaluate concepts such as power, inequality, and resources to see how those affect society. For my presentation, I'll be talking about three main points. The first point being, what should we expect from our schools, and what role do they play in this issue and topic? My second point being is, how do schools get their funding? Or how do they get their resources, and how do they choose to allocate those resources? And my third point being, how does all of this affect our students? What positive and negative outcomes can come out from our choices and decisions that we make as a society? All of these factors combined help contribute to the issue that is segregation in America. It may be hard to believe or see because segregation was abolished 60 years ago. However, situations like this still arise and are still prevalent in certain parts of America. So let's begin with our first talking point. What do we expect from our schools, and what is their role in this whole issue? Well, on paper, our schools strive to be what is called a meritocracy, which is a system in which hard work and effort will grant student success. So in theory, two students of two completely different backgrounds should be able to be equally successful if they put in the same amount of work. While we may be inclined to believe that this kind of system is perfect for the American school curriculum, this is not always the case. In reality, there are too many factors that affect student performance and can harm students in the long run. This mostly has to do with the fact that not all schools are built the same. All schools can vary in many different ways, such as not all teachers teach the same way, some schools have more curriculum opportunities than others, and some schools have more money in general. My main point is that the more money that a school has, the more likely that they are able to achieve positive student outcomes. This is further proven by an article by the National Bureaucracy of Economic Research conducted by Carabo C. Jackson, Recker C. Johnson, and Claudia Persisco. In the article, it states that a 10% increase per pupil spending each year for all 12 years of public school leads to a 0.27 more completed years of education and a 7.25% higher wages for the students in the long run. This proves that more money equals better student outcomes. I really appreciate this article because it specifically shows the ways that students can be successful if they're supported financially. Not only is it financially, but those financials in turn lead to greater support for students through the resources that they are able to be given, such as maybe the school can afford better teachers, better staff, more laptops, better books, and other extracurricular activities that may help students be more engaged with their environment. As you can see with this concept in hand, our American public school system is not necessarily a true meritocracy. And this whole competition, in a sense, is relatively unfair to students from low-income areas, as it doesn't put them up for success in the competition between higher-income students and higher-income schools. Now that we've established that more money equals more success for students, let's talk about why all schools don't have the same amount of money or funding, and why some schools get more money than others. So schools get their money from two different places: federal and state government money. Federal money only adds up to about 10% of all school money. State, on the other hand, is much more flexible and has much more power and determined by the state and how schools receive their money. So how do states determine how their money should be allocated? Well, states typically use an algorithm to determine how much money is given to their public schools. This algorithm is typically dependent on the worth of a neighborhood that a school resides in. So typically, high-income areas have better supported schools than low-income areas. So you may be thinking, what does this have to do with segregation in the modern public school system? Well, it actually has a lot to do with it. When a school receives lower funding and less amount of support from the state, there comes with a bias with it that they may not be able to support their students as much as a higher income school. With this bias, higher income families that may reside in the district of a low income schools will choose to opt out through either a private school or trying to change districts. This in turn leads to segregation between white and black students, as it is typical that low income families in certain areas may be predominantly black, and higher income families in certain areas may be predominantly white or Asian. So as we can see, all these issues that may arise between low and high income schools and areas mainly come from a state level. So what should we do about it? My biggest recommendation for this issue is to be involved with your local politics. However, several individuals feel discouraged to vote on a local and especially a state level because they feel that they're one in a million, that their vote may not have as much influence or merit as they may believe. However, I would like to disagree with that. In another article by the National Bureau of Economic Research by Andrew Gelman, Nate Silver, and Aaron Edlin states specifically that on a state level, one individual vote is much more likely to matter in some states more than other than voting on a national level. When it comes to local laws and regulations, state voting is definitely the way to go. It's important for me to address the power of the vote in this presentation because it really truly is one of the most powerful ways we can come together to address this issue. Without it, there's really no other way to directly attack the issue at hand. While it may be too late for us, we can definitely change how future students and generations come to relate to their school environment. Moving on to my third talking point, I would like to discuss how these situations can negatively affect students, especially those that are of low income. An article from the Hamilton Project called 13 Economic Facts About Social Mobility and the Role of Education states that with the rise of inequalities against low-income students, there is also a rise in restriction upon social mobility for these students. This means that the less that low-income students are supported, the less likely that they can go on to change their life situations and become successful adults. It is also specifically stated in the article that low-income students had a 40 to 60% likelihood of going to college, while high-income students had a 70 to 90% likelihood of going to college. With all this in mind, low-income students are the least likely to succeed in high school, and high-income students are significantly more likely to succeed in high school and go on to college and graduate college because that is the expectation for them, as well as the fact that they are more supported all around. All of this together, in turn, makes low-income students more at risk for delinquent behaviors, crime, and abuse. The scariest part about this issue for low-income students is that a lot of the times that they're not even aware of the inequalities that they face against higher-income students. A lot of the times it is just simply a part of the reality and they are subsequently blind to it all. This is mainly because they are so submerged and immersed in their own environment and that it is outside the norm for them to be engaged with their education and their ability to recognize the greatness in themselves and their true potential as students, as they can achieve anything they could if they really put their minds to it. And in the fact that they are not necessarily aware or adept in the knowledge that how the competition in the school system works, and this too puts them in a disadvantage when it comes to their wanting to achieve greatness in their lives. I would like to conclude by saying, I have personally witnessed the segregation between white and black students in America. During my junior year of high school, I participated in an internship in Chicago, Illinois at an inner-city charter school. What was really unique about my internship was that it was at a charter school and not a public school. With this charter school, it allowed the opportunity for both black and white students to interact in an environment that was both productive to their education but their sense of self. During my internship, I was also able to visit other inner-city public schools, and I noticed a great difference in population. When I asked other students why this was, they weren't really aware of the issue at hand. They didn't really notice it at all. When I talked to staff members, they explained to me that it really had to do a lot with funding and how every parent wants the best for their student, but they may express it in different ways. For higher income families, that may come through as they put their higher income child in a better school that is either a private school, a charter school, or a school of another district. In the end, schools are segregated in some parts of America, whether we'd like to admit it or not. This is all because of the fact of how schools are built up, how they're funded, and how this affects students. All these three factors in mind create the bias from parents that allows them to make the decision to take their students away from the regulated student body. That concludes my presentation. I hope you enjoyed it. I'm sorry that there's a lot of cuts in it. I mumble a lot and I stutter sometimes. I just wanted to be as streamlined as possible, but thank you so much. I had a great semester and this is one of my favorite classes so far at MiraCosta. Thank you again. Goodbye.